Welcome to the show today. Today I have Simon Erdmann with me, and he is the Chief Digital Officer at Cognizant Switzerland. And just want to dive right into your story. We had a really interesting exchange last week at an event that we did. We had some interesting exchanges before that on Skype as well. And now I want to dive a little bit more into what makes Simon Simon and what's the story behind Simon. So Simon, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what's your story that got you to where we are today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Daniel, for that opportunity and the discussion this morning. So what made me Simon? I mean, it feels like coming home right now, looking after digital. The key thing that drives all of us to some extent nowadays, because I actually grew up in agencies around in the new economy times, end of the 90s, working in the first internet presence for companies to be established, even before the World Wide Web kind of time was there. Which many of us might not remember, but I unfortunately still do. And then CD-ROM, point of information, point of sale kind of stuff, and worked a lot in retail, right, on shopping platforms. And I think we've even, if I think back to 1999, where we actually built a kind of fulfillment group within our own agency, I think there was already like taking some of the terms that we nowadays still have to solve, right? How do I connect e-commerce, for example, with real logistic, real world kind of logistic? What's the right model? What's the right operating model that I have to choose? How do I do that? And these were things that end of the 90s we were working on. And then from agencies, I started getting into retail through the e-shopping kind of things. And the last job actually that I had before moving to Cognizant was I was looking after all the e-commerce topics and platforms customer-wise for DHL Express. So a lot of kind of parcels that we send across around the world that were electronically manifested into the people were able to track and trace them. So it's quite exciting to be back in the digital topic, especially nowadays.
Perfect. So you had quite a bit of a journey in the digital world. What inspires you to get into? What inspired you to get into this digital tech field? Is this how you were born, or was there some piece that triggered you to go into this direction?
Well, at the start of the career, I think it was just curiosity, understanding what is this new technology about, right? And then you will not remember it, but when you think about what's the move from a 386 to a 486 kind of processing power, right? And the dark ages. So that was just, what can I do with that, right? And what is this new thing giving me? And I mean, today, technology is, most of the time, technology is cheaper, technology is faster, and we more and more see the things that we were desperately looking for in those dark ages, because we can actually make a change to products, to services, to whole business models, which was not the case at that point in time, right? Because technology itself could have potentially done some of the similar things that we do today, a little bit slower, a little bit more expensive, but the integration layer wasn't there. Right, so nothing was really integrated. And now with the internet structures that we have and the whole IoT kind of thing, I mean, think about how sexy it is that you buy your I don't know, hairdresser, or you buy your toaster from the shelf, and 10 years back, as an enterprise, you wouldn't have a chance to understand on how Simon is using that equipment in home. If I abuse it, for example, right? And now I have the chance to also get that kind of information, which gives me a whole lot of other knowledge around how customers behave, what they do with my product, right? I'm always thinking about this iPad spot that got viral in the web, right? Where I think a lady asks her father, right, and says, "Hey, how do you get along with that iPad?" And he's just shopping, I think, I don't know what it is, maybe onions or something, right? He's just shopping there and says, yeah, it's pretty fine. And he chops that on the iPad, washes it away, and puts it into the washing machine, right? And says that it's not bad. And these are the things, right, that come to my mind then when I look at that.
I love that. That's such a good. So I need to look this up. I need to look this video up. Grandpa or dad iPad something. So I need to check it out. That's brilliant. Now I'm always curious about that. Now you are one of those people who are not in tech for the sake of tech, but you're in technology for the sake of the application of it, for the sake of the impact the technology has on our daily lives. So I'm just curious, like on a deeper level, what is it that inspires you to go to work every day and work in technology?
Well, okay. How much time do we have? So definitely, I mean, technology is still part of my life, right? I love technology. I'm a gadget guy. And it's not necessarily everything around uh, some of the Apple kind of stuff or the things. There's a lot of interesting stuff around that's just fancy, right? And I like to try them out and test them. But the key thing is also about people. I see some of the culture coming back that we had in the new economy, yeah, of people coming in that are kind of groundbreaking, thought-provoking, yeah, drive a different kind of spirit. And I've always asked myself why a tie makes a difference, for example, in terms of how do I approach the other party, or what kind of value I put on the information that I get from the other party. Right now, we're back to the sneakers generation, and I mean, look at us, right? We have the kind of 45-year plus true millennials, which don't really fit into the picture. Now working with the real new generation that's coming. So people really makes a difference. It's also within our organization, the core that we look at, right? Get people that are not streamlined, these kind of things. And the other part is, of course, trying out new paths. So how can we make a product even better than it is today? How can we generate a service model that's around that's providing much better customer experiences on it? Which is, to some extent, I mean, you also have a fast following component in some of the businesses that we work with, right? But for some, it's really create something new. And how can I do that? That's still sexy, right? Because that's something that's not there right now. It's a challenge every day. It's a team challenge every day. And that's, I think, also what brings us up from the bed in the morning.
I love that. You know, you're one of those people who are you're one of these entrepreneurs who found this path to work with an amazing company. You know, because like everybody that I talk to, it doesn't matter in which position they are, if they're, you know, if they're the founder of their own company or whatever, or if they're, you know, an executive at a huge corporation. It doesn't matter. I always somehow get to talk to those kinds of people who simply are entrepreneurs. That's just that's just it, because for you it's always about, you know, creating new things, starting new things, the curiosity aspect, which really is about entrepreneurship a lot. So this is really interesting. Now I want to transition a little bit into the present. So what's most exciting right now? What are you working on? What is sort of the focus of what you're pursuing, and what's most exciting right now?
Yeah, there's also quite a lot because it's I think besides that, what I think is good that big corporations also talk to startups, and the startup culture and community is growing a lot with them as well to get new ideas. I think it's a kind of privilege I mean, we are a 260,000 people organization. It's a kind of privilege to work with top tier companies across the globe in what the digital journey is going to be, right? Or how they're going to kind of rebuild customer experiences and reinvent some parts of their business. What's most exciting, I think, is that the diversity also of topics. So we, for example, have we work on clients where we talk about precision farming. Right? You think about, okay, and for what reason can you do it, right? And there's also, in terms of the target setting, you can do it to be more efficient as a company. If your business model is you produce seeds and fertilizers and these kind of things, then you can obviously look into increasing your revenues. But it might also have a sustainability kind of component, right? Because you can also look at some of the poor regions in the world, and with scripted farming, educate people that are not that educated in terms of how all the things work together to get most of the land that they have, right? Which then helps them, helps the society in those countries. So therefore, I think it's also this diversity of topics that I like in terms of the purpose, right? We've recently done, it's about 1.5 years back, a procurement optimization program, which doesn't sound sexy per se. It doesn't sound too digital, right? Looking into purchase to pay processes and that stuff. And the interesting thing was that the client explicitly asked for not doing a cost and efficiency exercise. So as the project team, we were asked to explicitly not lock what the savings are process-wise. It was around the customer experience of a special group involved into that process. So I can't tell you right now because I can't disclose who the client is, right? But these people should concentrate on their day job, have less interaction as possible with the process. But if they have to interact, it should be as smooth and as nice as possible. So that was the briefing given. right? And I mean, how sexy is that? If you think about a worldwide corporation, not saying, okay, I want to get 1.5 million process cost released of that and want to increase straight through processing from 50 to 80%, something like that, right? Just saying, oh, I want this to be fun for my people. Yeah? And I think that's something, for example, we ourselves and all others could adopt that, for example, to how you book travel and do your travel and entertainment expenses. That would be nice, because I think none of these processes has ever been fun for the people using it, right? But just these perspectives, I think, also come with a more digital mindset, and I like that.
I love that. I also love how much you use the word sexy, because it's sort of a unique thing about you. It's like at the event and also in other conversations, it's this sort of like common thread, making things more sexy. And I think that is really powerful, because I had a conversation in another call with somebody who talked about the interaction between humans and technology through interface. Everything's basically a digital surface, or can be a digital surface. Everything should be like natural. It's not really natural for us to open an app on an iPhone. It's not natural. It's not like how our brain works and everything. And what you're talking about goes in a similar direction with making things more sexy, like corporate processes, procurement. Is like, oh my god, accounting and things like that. It's not very sexy for most people, but the reason is because it's not very much in alignment with how we work in a natural environment, in a way we walk through life, when we just simply live life. That's completely the opposite of what we do there right now. So I think that's a very interesting thread. So maybe talk about it a little bit more. I'm curious about your opinion on this. Where do you think this is going to get us with digital? If we say, okay, digital in general is making lots of maybe boring things a bit more sexy in the process. Where do you think we stand with this right now in a general business sense? And where do you think we're going with this?
I think it's still the beginning. I mean, I have to say that I'm not the hype guy, right? So I like the digital discussion, but I think it's a little bit overhyped, and there needs to be some demystification being done. Because I recently had a discussion on it's a supply chain related topic with somebody, right? And the same topic has come up, and we worked on it, and we developed solutions in 1998, 1999 already. But it's still the same topic, right? Which is basically around the data that I have on my product sales. If I give that back to my supply chain, what's the benefit I can get? Because you can better structure your production. It was called collaborative planning, forecasting, replenishment. But the whole thing is coming back again. Today, it's easier to exchange that kind of data and see what the impact is, for example, on production, procurement, potentially insurance kind of things and that stuff, right? But it's the same topic, so we shouldn't overhype that. But in terms of sexiness, and I definitely agree. I mean, there's also a lot of unsexy and a lot of stupid things that digital is doing right now, right? When I think about the discussion around what you can do in data analytics, for example, there's a website somewhere in the US that's called musicmakesyoudumb.com. Yeah, so you can have a look there, and then the US uses a different scheme on IQ, on intelligence measurement, right? But then you can check, okay, how intelligent are you most likely based on the music that you would like or typically consume, right? I mean, you can do every kind of correlation, yeah, but it's a useless thing. It's nice to have a laugh, and then you move on, because it's also not rocket science. Because if you like Beethoven, then you're good. If you like Beyonce, then you have an issue. So that's basically what you will find when you look at the website. So the stupid kind of things. But there's also a lot of real stuff. And especially if I stay with analytics, right? The whole thing around how analytics, AI, machine learning in combination is going to evolve has the potential to really change how we work and what we work on, right? What we work on in terms of, you can automate some of the stuff with a lot more prediction, but also what we work on, because by now there's different views, but there's no creativity within the machine, right? There are some examples where people say different, but so really to, at the end, take the information, validate the information again as well, right? And then think about, okay, what am I going to do next now? So what's the decision that I need to take now? Or what is it telling me about my customer, about my business, about my ecosystem that I'm working in? Is something that machines can just give you some guidance or idea, right? But then the human needs to take over and really get the essence and then develop something new out of it. And I think that's really a mind change for a lot of us, because at the CEO Collaboration Day, I think that you were hosting. Thanks again, by the way, for inviting. We had this discussion around what makes a leader and what's the difference. Is there a difference actually between managing and leading? Right. And with that one, I think it's definitely, we need to be, as humans, need to be at the leading edge of that kind of development.
I find that very fascinating. I mean, that discussion always, what is management, what is leadership? And I very much believe that now with the technology we have, a lot of the management can actually be done by technology, which I'm so grateful for, because then we can finally focus on the stuff that actually allows us to be more human. And it's a very interesting place we're going to. I mean, staying on this topic of business and sexy, there's a lot of a lot of worry as well out there in the world, like, oh my God, AI is going to kill all the jobs and everything. Nobody ever talks about job creation, of course, right? Because that's not the sexy topic in the news. It's just the death of jobs, of course. But in general, I think we're going to go into an interesting direction there, with so many people around the world being able, for the first time maybe in their lives, to actually go back to their creativity and go back to their natural way of doing things, because not only they work different in how they work, but now they work on different on what they actually work on. Now suddenly there's a whole new range of jobs, of roles, of responsibilities, of things like that created. So what's your perspective on that in terms of how we're going to work and what we're going to work on? How do you think this is going to change in the near future because of digital?
Well, there's obviously, and if I would be a politician, then I think it's good to talk about how many jobs are going to be destroyed by digital and by technology and the bots taking over these kind of scenarios, right? I mean, some of my colleagues actually wrote a nice book which is called "What to Do When Machines Do Everything."
I just finished reading that. I loved it. Thank you for recommending it, by the way.
So we can even say it's available on Amazon. So just get a copy, or call myself. Yeah, and that's basically at the end telling the story. Okay, yes, obviously there are jobs that will be going away. It was the same with every industrial revolution that we had in the past. But at the same time, we see that post all of those revolutions, there are more jobs for us as human beings, right? That we have to do, and most of the time these are better jobs. Because you don't have to do that much hard work anymore. You can more use your brain. You can more do to stretch it again, some sexy stuff, right? Which you couldn't do in the past because it was just boring things that you had to do for 50, 60, 70, 80% of your time. And I really hope that, and we've been the ones, by the way, putting out that claim saying digital is all about human, because I think the next, maybe about 5 to 10 years, it's on us to figure out how we can best work together. So human to machine kind of collaboration, communication. You see a lot of collaborative kind of robots come up, right, across all sorts of business or work. So that can be, how do I assemble a car, up to brain work, where you have your KI or AI kind of support that you use. And some of the boring stuff we also see with interesting things going away, like, for example, how we schedule this session, right? I mean, Amy was taking over to schedule the session, and I would love to meet Amy, but meeting Amy, I think, means just looking at a few lines of code in terms of that, which I think is nice, because, I mean, who wants to look into diaries and send 50 emails across to find a slot, right? Come on. On the other hand, maybe the doodle guys might see that differently, because it's going to push on their model. So I think collaboration between man and machine, or human and machine, is the key thing for the next 5 to 10 years. We also need to be a bit more creative on what does that mean actually, and in which areas can I better use that power. And we need to explore how machine learning can even expedite that, maybe also the next 5 to 10 years, to see how can I take better decisions actually using machine AI and kind of things. The other side is, I think, with products really becoming smarter, and there's very little smart products out there, right? Because most of the AI and product kind of stuff that we call smart is pretty dumb right now. Most of the stuff is hard coded, which is not really intelligent. But I think that's about to explore, and it's what you already mentioned in our discussion like 10 minutes back. The intelligence should come into how can I make the day of a human easier, How can I make it more interesting, maybe? And at the end, coming back, how can it be more sexy to interact and really actually do the work and do some nice things, right? And there's a lot that we see, which is, I think, good. I mean, if I think about my cell phone talking to me, telling me when the next meeting is, how long it's going to take to drive there, um, already warming up the car, maybe, depending on what it is, right? So there's a lot of stuff that I don't need to think about anymore that consumed me and took time in the past. And I'd love to put that on working on the new product kind of stuff. Right. One last sentence on that. I mean, we also spend a lot in terms of what we call anthropologist research, where you can see the kind of say a flip side of the digital thing. Really taking digital is all about human very seriously, because we learned a lot working on stuff for clients in just observing how people behave using your product, your service, behave in their natural habitat, if you like. So it's we sometimes call it the zoo lens, because you just look at them in their daily lives and these things. But it's very powerful to really see that and make the interaction points, more sexy again and more easy to use, more fun to use.
I love the picture you're painting over the next 5 to 10 years. One thing that's always coming up for me, because so I love science fiction, right? And it's Minority Report is an interesting movie. You've seen Minority Report, like 2002 Tom Cruise movie or something like that. So what is that? 15 years ago. And it's sort of like, oh yeah, that's going to be the thing in the next 5 years, right? Everybody's just going to move stuff around and have these holographic screens and everything. Also, that was 15 years ago, and today it's like, yeah, we're sort of like very slowly getting there. So what's your general perception? I mean, do you think in the next 5 to 10 years we're over predicting, or most people are over predicting it? Or is this going to be a different time now because of that new technology that we have?
Well, we can kind of stretch Bill Gates again, right? In terms of underestimating what's coming next and then overestimating what's coming after that. I think it is a change. The change will not be from today to tomorrow, right? But definitely we're moving, I think, towards a tipping point where we get a groundbreaking different use of technology, especially when I talk about AI. Right? Because as I mentioned before, there are some people already that talk about machines having emotions, machines bringing creativity and those things, which always makes me shiver a bit, right? Because sometimes there's this scary, creepy moment around it. But if it's really going that way, the machines learn from us. The question is the intent, not to be the better human, and then do some evolution in that one, but to have a better collaboration model. If I talk about that, right, and augment ourselves, then I think we're on the right way and we're breaking through something that hasn't been there in the past. Because in the past it was always augment myself to do something better, faster, whatever. Next might be also to lead myself to a next level. Because the machine, already understood what that might be, and therefore can help us achieve that maybe faster than we would be ourselves. And by the way, I also like science fiction. A Minority Report, I think in some areas we're not that far off that one, right? But I think we're lucky that nobody is being arrested for something that might happen in the future by now, because I wouldn't rely on that. But you can even go back, right? I'm a Star Trek fan, despite the fact that they invented the mobile phone, that they invented the iPad. Sorry, Steve Jobs. And other things. There's actually a Star Trek original series clip. I think it was number 28 or something like that. It's called The Ultimate Computer. And in The Ultimate Computer, the scenario is that supercomputer M4 is being installed on board the Enterprise spaceship to replace the 400 people crew on it and take all decisions and automate everything. And there's a nice discussion between Bones and Kirk, on if he's a kind of narcissist type of guy because he feels being replaced by that machine, and losing his status as a starship captain is maybe something that he should know better given his psychological profile. And Bones actually answers something like, hey, we always feel sorry about a guy losing his job to a machine, right? So they're already living that scenario. And that is, by the way, from, I think it's 1968. So sometimes even in a serious business discussion, right, a little bit of science fiction might help to just
Absolutely.
think through.
Absolutely. I find that fascinating. Like, that's been a while ago. And also just in terms of how what you mentioned before, in terms of how we interact with basically technology itself. I think maybe one of the biggest shifts that we see right now is for since IT started to exist, the way we interacted with it is a bit like when we have a team and we micromanage the team and we try to control it and we try to program the people and we try to just be in charge of everything, which obviously drives a manager or a leader crazy. But that's sort of like how we let or managed machines and software and everything in the past, because there was not really another way of doing it. But now we're sort of at that tipping point I mentioned before, where we may have an opportunity to go from manager to leader, even with technology. And instead of saying, here's exactly what you need to do, just like with a team, instead of doing that, giving a bit more of a maybe unstructured or a bit more of an indication, just based on principles, based on essence of things, based on
Mhm.
decisions, and then let basically the team or the machine take over the rest and make their own smaller decisions, maybe not big stuff, but in the beginning, especially not big stuff, but more, I guess, autonomous. Do you feel like it's sort of like almost getting there already, or will we arrive at one point in this future?
Well, I'm not sure about the managing leads, right? Because and again, we had the discussion before, and I don't really like it because I think to really do the right thing that you have to do in a certain moment, right? It always needs a mix of manage and lead, and the mix is going to change, right? So the borders are becoming a bit more fluffy. So therefore, you need to have both genes, if you like, to actually do it. That's my own belief. That's why I don't like the divide. But there's definitely machines helping with a lot of that stuff. I mean, we had it already. We have one client, for example, where there's a process automated. There's a robot behind it. The robot got a name. And now suddenly, and that's also an interesting development, right? That people don't talk about the algorithm XYZ has given me this following result. They're now talking about, okay, um, Victoria has actually done the following, yeah, because Victoria is the name of the robot, the name of the code, which is quite interesting because they adopt already the machine, the robot, the algorithm, the AI as part of their workforce, as part of their colleagues, right? They just can't have a beer together by now. So that's the socializing part is missing a little bit. So that's what I see more and more progressing. But again, I mean, with the technology, we have to find out. Um, I just thought about when you raised the question, right? I thought about something that's some old stuff, which was called NLP, neuro linguistic programming, which was basically in very simple terms about how can I influence you and use how the brain works, right? To make sure that I can just sell my stuff to you. Yeah, so I try to program that into your head that you have to buy my product. That's one way, right? Seeing it, and that's for me again the difference to digital, because that's more like it's more like how can I find the backdoor, right? Because you don't really need that stuff, or maybe you're not really convinced, but I try to find a backdoor to still make the sale. And with, for example, anthropologist kind of research, and if you leave data security concerns away at present, right, just for a second, and say, I have all the data about yourself, I can just make the right product or service at the right time, at the right situation in your life, uh, be available to you without any further step. And I mean, how nice is that, right? Because I anticipate what you need before you even think about it yourself, and I make that available to you. That's great. I love that, right? So even the Uber thing, what they do, right? I mean, I have to press the button, and in theory, I wait something between 1.8 minutes to 3.5 minutes to have the car. Why should I, right? I should just go outside and have something that takes me from A to B. It's sexy, yeah. But for that, I also need to. I mean, that's why I said data security. I need to be a bit more open and transparent. And I think that's a separate discussion, which will take quite some time. We had an interesting workshop just 2 weeks ago about mHealth, mobile health, and what the opportunities and risks are of that one, right? And it's an interesting question. I mean, if somebody tells you, okay, when you give that type of data to me, statistically, I can make you live 2 years or 5 years more. would you actually provide their data, knowing that somebody could also do some dark side stuff with that, right? But on the other hand, why not? So I think there's, besides ethical questions, there's also a lot of flip sides and downsides that we still need to solve as we go more and more into automation and digital.
Absolutely, yeah, that's definitely something. It is a whole other conversation, and maybe we'll get to that at one point as well. But for the meantime, I just wanted to thank you for the great insights and really interesting discussion on that, because you're a practical guy, and I really appreciate that, because you're not the theorist talking about the next 50 years in some weird sense, but you're really down to earth, and I really appreciate that. We don't have, we have a lot of the hype and stuff like that, so I really appreciate people like you who bring it down to earth. So once again, thank you so much. Where can people connect with you or learn more about you, the company, what kind of work that you're up to, what's most exciting for you?
How they connect?
Yes.
That's pretty easy. So just go to LinkedIn, right? Just search me on that one, or Xing, or Facebook, or any of those kind of platforms. If you have Slack, send me a Slack message. So I'm everywhere. Otherwise, the easiest is to just send me a note, an email. So it's simon.erdmann@cognizant.com. And I'm happy for everybody to just get in contact and have a nice discussion. And I love thought-provoking discussions. So come with a problem, come with an idea, come with a total different opinion, and tell me that this interview sucked because I just got it wrong. And then we will hopefully have a nice chat.
I love that openness. So we're going to link the video to those sources so people can connect with you. Once again, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom.